car we're driving is the 2023 Honda HR-V V Turbo with Honda Sensing. And this car right here costs 1,649,000 pesos, a little bit steep for a subcompact crossover SUV. Is it worth it? Let's see in this video. Let's first take a look at the interior right here and see what you get. Now, in the previous Honda HR-V got a lot of soft touch materials with a lot of padding in it. Unfortunately, for this version of the HR-V, while you still do get some of it over here at the dashboard and over at the side, they are quite thin now, especially since this car right here is competing with a lot of its Chinese competitors with tons of soft touch materials on the inside. So yeah, that's something that's a little bit of a downgrade compared to before. What I really like here though is the instrument cluster that is partly digital. You have a 7-inch screen right there with a lot of your trip computer, but your speedometer itself, it is still analog. In the center, you also have an 8-inch touchscreen with a reverse camera in 3 different modes, and even get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But yes, you will need this wire right here. It's not wireless. Another very cool feature right here are the air vents. You see there's the off mode, there's the regular mode, but if you don't want the air blowing straight in your face, there's even a diffuse mode. It's so intuitive, and I mean, like, every single car out there should pretty much have this feature right here. It's perfect. The seats, they are pretty thick and very comfortable with these side bolsterings. Unfortunately, they are only manually adjustable even for the driver's side. And also, one more thing I found out right here is that this thigh support, the front part of it, it's a little bit angled too high, much like an old Accord. So when you're driving this for a while, it kind of presses on your thighs, which gives you this weird feeling of your blood not circulating properly. Also, to give space for the extra cool cargo that we will show you later at the back, they did move the fuel tank towards the front of this vehicle, so your feet will hit it if you try to move your feet backwards and try to angle your legs 90 degrees, so that could get a little bit annoying. Now, this V trim also gets paddle shifters, you get your adaptive cruise control, you get lane departure warning, lane keeping assist, as well as forward collision mitigation, and even lead car departure attention or warning. And that is pretty cool all as well. We'll check that out in the drive later on. Those are all controlled via the buttons on your steering wheel, and this entire steering column is both tilt and telescoping. Here at the center, you have a single zone climate control, a bunch of cubbies, a regular shifter, electronic parking brake with auto hold, hill descent control, and you even get some drive modes, which only this V trim and above gets. In terms of your airbags, well, you only get 4 airbags. Unfortunately, you cannot get curtain airbags. Over here at the back, some of those really minimally padded soft touch materials over at the side, they do continue. And space here in terms of your legroom as well as your headroom is pretty good. Unfortunately, the HR-V is pretty much on the super narrow side, so you can totally forget about seating a third person right here unless you want to give him the worst day of his life. But for your toys right here, there are a couple of cool places. Aside from your usual map pockets, instead of having like jug holders down below in your door panel, Honda placed it right up here, which is a much more convenient place to be. Take note that Honda specifically says that it's a jug holder and not just a cup holder. It says there that you cannot put cups in there because it isn't too deep. You also get rear air vents as well as 2 USB ports only for this V trim and above, and there's also extra cubby down below, plus an armrest by the center with 2 more cup holders. Another thing I really like back here is that there's even this tiny pocket right here for you to put your phone or an alcohol bottle, and it stays in place. Now, remember how I said that the fuel tank was moved over at the front to give space to the really cool cargo thing here at the back? Well, then you got a couple of modes. So yes, over at the back, your space isn't the biggest for cargo. It's about at par with the rest of the cars in its class. But Honda also gives you the option of long mode, wherein you can recline this front row seat and it gives you space to put like surfboards, or you can even have tall mode, which is arguably the coolest thing. Quite similar to a Honda City. You simply lift up the seat bottom right here and push this down to lock it, and now you have so much space right here. You can even do it for this seat right here, if I can get it to go up, and there you go. You got tons of space back here. You can even crouch down like this. But what about on the exterior? How does the HR-V shape up? Well, first off, the hood. It's pretty long for the size of this vehicle, so it really gives off this very sporty look right here. LED headlights, pretty beautiful grille with a lot of these like cubes and whatnot on it. Then if you look down below by your bumper, you even have like this energy pulse design. right there. It looks pretty cool. Over at the side of the vehicle, you get 17-inch rims, grayed out for this V trim. And if you look at your roofline, it is also incredibly sleek. It is indeed very sporty. The car looks incredibly compact. And to make it even more compact, Honda gave you your door handles right here by the pillar to open your rear doors, just like that. Now, while the door thud at the back sounds pretty good, the front part of the car, well, there's a little bit more left to be desired, because once you close it, it has this feeling of not wanting to close that much, so the door thud sound isn't as good either. It's as if the rubber seals are a little bit too thick. At the back of the Honda HR-V, it's also very sporty. You have this sloping tailgate, you have a spoiler effect up top, a shark's fin antenna, and even a light bar effect. Look down below and you even get real dual exhaust tips. As for the power plant, the Honda HR-V in this V-turbo trim comes with a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine, dual overhead camshaft as well, making 177 horsepower and 240 newton meters of torque, mated to a CVT transmission. Now for fuel economy, it's about okay, not exactly the best inside the city at around 7.2 kilometers per liter, but once you get this up over to the highway and you drive pretty sanely, you can get this up to 18.2 kilometers per liter. And now back to driving. The Honda HR-V, despite this price tag, is still probably the most engaging car to drive in its class. Now, the Honda HR-V is based on a Honda City, and despite it being a lot taller, it still feels very similar to a Honda City, which is a good thing. You see, the handling is pretty amazing. The steering is probably the most direct in its class. It is an electronic power assisted steering, so it is still light, and it's not as communicative as probably older Hondas, but still, for its class, it probably is the best. Now, when you throw this over corners, it also functions and performs much like a Honda City, meaning, again, despite its height, it doesn't really roll too much. Its power, with that 177 horsepower, it may not be class leading because it does share the exact same power figures as some of the Chinese competitors out there, but it's the CVT transmission in this one that really shines. Now, when you do put this car under hard acceleration, whether or not you put it in sport mode, it is incredibly responsive. There's almost no throttle lag, there's almost no turbo delay either, and the CVT transmission doesn't even feel like a CVT transmission. There's no rubber banding, it isn't too loud, and it just gives you a very seamless drive even if you do want to do hard overtakes. What about its bad sides when it comes to driving? Well, first and foremost, it is the noise in here, because for some reason Honda didn't put too much noise insulation down over at the floor. So when you do drive this, even at just speeds of around 35-38 kilometers per hour, there seems to be a lot of road noise that really does enter in the cabin. Usually in some of its competitors, you're gonna start to find road noise creeping in at around 80 or 100, or sometimes even only at extra legal speeds of 120. But for this one, really, even at low speeds, you get bombarded with tons of road noise. Now, when you do get up over to the highway, wind noise thankfully isn't that bad, but it really is just those road noise that kind of gets to you and kind of kills the experience here inside the Honda HR-V. The way it rides too, so yes, it does handle well, but despite that, it doesn't give you a suspension that's incredibly firm. Don't get me wrong, it's still firmer than a lot of its competition, but for your daily driving, you wouldn't really find it lacking too much. As for vibrations, even when idle, there is very minimal vibrations. Although it is haptic and you can feel it, it isn't too bad either. What I don't like also too much about it is its visibility. So yes, on the outside, the high doors and small windows provide a very sleek and sporty look. But as you drive this car, and even if you jack your seats up pretty high, or actually especially when you jack your seats up pretty high for shorter people such as me, well, then you're gonna find these windows to be a little bit too short and you can barely see anything out of it. And look at this sun visor right here. Well, that is already practically useless because it pretty much obstructs more than 50% of your view ahead. The Honda HR-V also gets adaptive cruise control with low speed follow. Now, the issue with this one is as you're following along the highway, fine, that works perfectly fine. When you're following inside the city, that also works perfectly fine until you do have to come to a complete stop, because what happens is that it does follow the car in front of you to a complete stop. Unfortunately, the very moment it comes to a complete stop, it immediately goes forward. So if you're not alert on brakes, well, then you're going to crash into the car in front of you. And now for the verdict. Once again, the Honda HR-V in this V-Turbo trim comes in at 1,649,000 pesos. If you're just looking for a daily drivable subcompact crossover SUV, then maybe this car is not bang for the buck at all. But if you're looking for a Honda with amazing driving dynamics, as well as an incredibly clever storage area, including that tall mode, then maybe the Honda HR-V in this V trim might just be a purposely built subcompact crossover just for you.